everyone, and welcome back to Story Stalking, a division of Dead to Rights, the podcast video for the crime genre industry. I'm your host, Donna Carrick. Today we bring you episode 9, and the story we're going to read is Brainworm by M.H. Callway, my very good friend Madeline Harris Callway. And it appeared, of course, in this book, In the Key of 13, by the Mesdames of Mayhem, Carrick Publishing, 2019. I hope you'll enjoy it, and also look for Madeline Harris Callway's other works. She writes as M.H. Callway. You can certainly find her novel, Windigo Fire, and you'll find her other stories in all of the Mesdames anthologies, as well as a number of other anthologies, Carrick Publishing anthologies, and many more. She is a well-known Canadian writer and has short stories published all over the place. So look for her as M.H. Callway. And I hope you'll enjoy this story as much as I'll enjoy bringing it to you. Brainworm by M.H. Callway. And you are right to notice that I do read without glasses. That's why you usually see me without glasses. Sur le pont d'Avignon, Fiona huddled over her rapidly cooling coffee. Maman's damn tune wouldn't stop. Even shock and awe couldn't blast it from her mind. Her heart still hammered like a drum. The incident kept playing over and over in her mind. Halfway out of Toronto, to survive the blizzard, she'd fled Highway 403 for the relative safety of the service road. Driving blind, she'd sought shelter behind a transport truck, but it crawled along at 20 clicks below the speed limit. Cars stormed past her in the passing lane. She was losing time. She had to make sure Mama was all right. For God's sake, grow a pair. Find a hole in the traffic. Move. That's what her brother Bertie shouted at her the few times he deigned to be a passenger in her Honda. But it had taken miles and miles to work up her nerve. Then, right by the Royal Botanical Gardens, the transport's brake lights flashed on, forcing her into the oncoming lane. Out of nowhere, a white ghost slammed into her side. That SUV, I could be dead right now. Terrible, said the lady behind the counter, whose name tag read Linda. But they didn't hit you or nothing, right? No, of course not. In truth, Fiona remembered only fragments, a flicker in her peripheral vision, blaring horns, the flash image of the white SUV fishtailing behind her, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. They were shaking even now. She should have cleared the salt and dirt off her windows. She knew she should have. Breathless, she'd pulled into the first donut shop she saw. Climbing out into the teeth of the howling wind, she hadn't dared to check for damage. Did the SUV driver get her license plate? She gripped her coffee mug. Outside the shuttering plate glass window of the Tim Hortons, gusts of snow swirled across the deserted parking lot. White is such a stupid color for a car, Fiona said. I mean, Canada isn't Florida. You got that right. Linda tugged on her pink cardigan. You know the first rule of winter driving, don't you? If you don't need to go out, don't. I don't have a choice. Cherie, my stepmother, she's elderly. Fiona fumbled in her purse for her cell phone and tried Cherie again. Still a busy signal. She slammed her phone down on the counter. Problems? Mama leaves her phone off the hook, or she just lets it ring and then claims she can't hear it. Unless Dora Mason phones. Cherie always answers her calls, Fiona thought. Hey, I can relate. My dad drove us crazy, Linda topped up Fiona's mug without asking. Finally got him a phone from Walmart with real big numbers and a super loud ring. Fiona pulled a face. She'd given Cherie a similar phone, but to no avail. Sometimes I think she's ignoring me deliberately, playing games with me. Terrible, Linda shook her head in sympathy. Fiona seized her phone and punched in Bertie's number. 3 rings and his voicemail kicked in. as usual. Forget it. She'd deal with Cherie on her own, like every other time. She forced a polite smile and waved off another offer of coffee from Linda. Funny thing, I just remembered. My trendy little brother drives a white car, a Jeep. Back outside, Fiona dashed for her Honda, the wind tearing through her coat and hair. This time she couldn't ignore the silver gleam of fresh metal in the long scrape down the driver's side, or the sizable dent in the back fender. Heart beating, she climbed in behind the wheel. I don't need this, she thought. Please, I don't need more trouble. Her breath coated the inside of the windshield. Sitting there, she remembered her first glimpse of Bertie's new Jeep Cherokee. She'd turned into the driveway of his Oakville home and pulled up right beside it. Light streamed down from the full moon overhead, lighting the Jeep almost theatrically. How glossy its paintwork looked, as smooth as rich cream. How perfect, how moneyed, how impregnable. Just like her trim, immaculately dressed little brother. Probably the only reason he'd asked her over, to show it off. Mind you, Bertie never grew to be tall. He probably couldn't see over the steering wheel of his oversized piece of bling. She shook herself back to reality and summoned up Google Maps on her phone. What was the fastest way home? To Cherie and Dad's house, rather. There. She could circle back to the Royal Botanical Gardens, cut over to Limestone Road, and then head up Hamilton Mountain, though that meant using that nasty, narrow road up the face of the escarpment. She glanced back at the Tim Hortons. Linda was watching her through the plate glass window. She managed a jaunty wave and backed out of the ice-encrusted parking space. That was dumb, she thought, pulling out onto the main road. Venting to Linda, a perfect stranger. She really was losing it. Sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on y danse, l'on y danse. Damn that tune. Even 30 years later, she still hated it. It was Cherie's favorite ditty. She'd made all her students sing it in French class to encourage an appreciation of l'histoire et la culture de France. Fiona, who had no ear for languages, tried her best to keep up, but only provoked both Cherie's and her classmates' laughter when she chanted, Sur le pont d'Artagnan, Loridosa, Loridosa. Cherie entered Dad's life a short year after Mother had died. All Fiona's friends raved about their new French teacher who had left the lights of Paris to teach in the boring backwater of Hamilton. Imagine. She had thick black hair smoothed into a chignon. Her egg yellow jacket, red shoes, and clanking costume jewelry added le punch to her wardrobe, as she put it to the class. Nothing, though, struck Fiona as more profoundly stupid than the name Cherie called herself, Madelle, a witty contraction of Madame and Mademoiselle, the French version of Ms. Très chic, non? Fiona soon began to hate French class. Cherie liked to single her out, posing questions about tricky French spellings with a twist to her cherry red lips. She lingered beside Fiona's desk, scanning her work before departing with a small tap-tap of her fingers on Fiona's notebook. That Dad would consider dating her, let alone marry her, was unthinkable. But he had. Time, though, erodes everything. Dad and Cherie's 30-year marriage with its ups and downs, foreign travels, and family festivities had faded into memory. Their only son, Bertie, was now 29 years old, a sought-after database analyst. And Cherie was no longer a glamorous 40. She'd dwindled into a frail shadow of her younger self. Fiona forced her eyes back onto the road. The weather had deteriorated. Clouds of blowing snow wrapped everything in a haze. Oncoming headlights loomed towards her like the dull yellow eyes of beasts. She slowed to a crawl, terrified she might need to swerve or brake. The Royal Botanical Gardens were barely recognizable under the heavy shroud of snow. She inched past them. It's like the Ice Age has come again, she thought, grinding human civilization, our history, our lives, into nothing. By the time she reached the escarpment, she was sweating in her down coat despite her broken car heater. The road ahead looked icy, treacherous. She thought of the deeply cracked asphalt underneath her wheels, imagining great sections hiving off, tossing her car down hundreds of feet into the gardens of the stone mansions below. Halfway up, her car phone system shrilled to life. "Bertrand White here," his voice startled her. He almost never returned her phone calls, especially when she needed to talk to him. "Oh, Bertie, thank God you called me back." Bertrand, he pronounced the name the French way. She ignored his automatic correction, concentrated on steering. "I've been trying to reach Mama all day. She isn't picking up." "Oh, for God's sake, she's probably gone for a walk." "In the middle of a snowstorm?" "Well, if you're worried, get the two Julies to check on her." That was Bertie's favorite epithet for Cherie's next-door neighbors, Julian and his husband, Jules. "No, I've asked them too many times. Besides, I'm already here, driving up Escarpment Road." "What, now? You're supposed to be looking for a job." "I am looking, and for the last 3 years, Mama has been my job. It's because of her the insurance company fired me." A slip of the back tire sent her heart racing. She took a deep breath. "Mama's bank manager called me. She said it's urgent. Do you know what it's about?" "It's nothing. Dora can handle it." "No, Dora cannot handle it. I'm the one with power of attorney." "Joint power of attorney with me," Bertie reminded her. "Look here, since you called, Dora asked me for the singer. I said she could have it." "What?" The road curved back on itself, a hairpin turn. She negotiated the curve at a snail's pace. Singer? What was Bertie talking about? The old Singer sewing machine in Dad's study that Cherie used as a plant stand? But that was hers, and Bertie knew it. The Singer belonged to Mother, her real mother, before Dad married Cherie. "No, Dora cannot have the Singer." "Why do you care? You never use it. It's just taking up space. Besides, it isn't worth a damn thing." Trust money-minded Bertie to know that. "I said no, and don't change the subject. What is going on with Mama's bank?" "I have no idea. Can we discuss this later? I have a meeting." "You always have a meeting. Why is everything always up to me, Bertie?" "Bertie?" The car phone had fallen silent. Once again, her little brother had cut her off. Her car crested the hill. Here, at the top of the escarpment, the winds blew much harder, buffeting her Honda left and right. Only a few more streets to Dad's house, she told herself. She could do this. The way was familiar now, a long straight run past the brick Victorians perched along the edge of the escarpment, followed by a sharp curve north. At this point, the boulevard gave onto a dull street lined with substantially more modest homes. Bungalows from the 1960s in the style of Frank Lloyd Wrong. Dad would joke. Even better, he relished the street's absurdly inappropriate name, Upper Paradise. "Where's Lower Paradise, then?" he'd say. "Ah, right. It's the other place. Our street. Hell Street." He meant Hill, not Hell Street. The road she turned onto now, a street as bland as its name. She pulled up in front of an equally bland yet achingly familiar split level. Its peeling white paint made her sad, but to her it was home. Always home. Even though she was now 43 and had lived in Toronto for more than 25 years. She paused, getting out of the car, gathering strength to brave Cherie's latest caprice. Last week, a strong odor of mildew had led her downstairs to the basement laundry next to her old teenage bedroom. There, she'd discovered a moldering wet load of Dad's old underwear in the washing machine. What was Cherie thinking? Dad had died more than 3 years ago. And what had Cherie done when she'd confronted her? Stood there giggling at the top of the basement stairs while she, Fiona, scrubbed out the machine with bleach. But when she tried to shovel the reeking mass of laundry into the garbage can outside, Cherie turned into a wildcat, shrieking insults at her, pummeling her, clawing through the garbage can, desperate to retrieve everything. Thank God the two Julies intervened. They managed to calm Cherie down and lead her back into the kitchen. By the time Fiona returned from dragging the garbage can out to the curb for pickup, Cherie was all smiles, humming to herself over a cup of tea. Sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on danse, l'on danse. The curtains in the windows facing the street were still drawn. No lights on inside. Was Cherie still in bed? She'd been sleeping in more and more lately. Fiona got out of her car and trudged through the deep snow covering the driveway. The concrete steps leading up to the front porch were thick with snow and ice. No one had cleared them since her last visit. Damn that kid, Dora's nephew. She hated being right all the time. A week ago, she'd been going through Cherie's bank statement at the kitchen table when she found the canceled check Bertie had made out to Dora. $1,500, Bertie? For snow clearing? She'd shouted after he finally answered his phone. Dora's 73. Are you out of your mind? Oh, for God's sake, I made it out to Dora to give to her nephew. The kid needs a job. Jules and Julian have always cleared Mama's snow. For nothing, for friendship. We don't know anything about Dora's nephew. Have you even met the kid? Dora swears he won't leave a snowflake for Cherie to trip over. I trust Dora completely. She's Mama's best friend. Since when are they best friends? They never saw much of each other until 6 months ago. And when they worked together at our high school, Mama used to call Dora déclassée. Don't you remember? You're imagining things. Dora didn't even come to Dad's funeral. Of course she was there. At this point, true to form, Bertie hung up on her. Damn those stairs. If Cherie ventured out, she'd fall, break a bone, or worse. Fiona gripped the rusty wrought iron railing and hauled herself up, one slippery step at a time. Safely at the top by the front door, she dug through her coat pocket for her keychain. Funny how the overcast sky and blowing snow cast a strange light. The brass bolt lock seemed to glow against the faded red paint of the front door. She pushed her tarnished house key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. Had she made a mistake? She yanked out her key and stared at it. Of course, she had the right key. She'd used the same key since high school. She tried again, wriggling the key, coaxing the lock. Still nothing. Was the lock frozen? Had Cherie's furnace gone out? Was she lying on the floor, dead or dying of hypothermia? Cherie, she banged on the door. Open up. It's me, Fiona. No answer. She pressed her ear against the door, listening for Cherie's light footsteps. Not a sound. She hammered the door again, shouted again, screamed, in fact. Fiona! Julian, a burly Englishman in his 60s, called from his porch next door. Anything the matter? Cherie isn't answering. I can't open the door. My key refuses to work, Fiona called back. I'll bring our key right over. He ducked back inside his house and reappeared a moment later, dressed in boots and a tweed overcoat. Fiona watched him lumber through the snow, over to the bottom of the steps leading up to Cherie's porch. Bloody hell, look at those steps, Julian said. You really should have let Jules, the lad, look after them. I told Bertie it's no trouble for us. He balanced his way up the steps to join her. Right then, here's our key. Let's have a go. He tried the door. The lock still wouldn't budge. That's odd. Julian banged on the front door. Cherie, it's Julian from next door. Open up, please. Fiona's worried about you. Still nothing. Let's give it one last old-school try, shall we? Julian twisted his key again, with some force. Julian, stop, Fiona cried. You'll break it off. Oh, that's what I said to him last night. Jules, the lad, stood at the bottom of the stairs. He was much younger and slimmer than his husband, and wore a fashionable green parka. Time to call the police, my lad. Break Cherie's bloody door down. Make sure she's all right, Julian said. No, not the police, Fiona cried. The scrapes on her car, the white SUV. But Cherie went out, Jules, the lad, broke in. She left hours ago with that Dorosaurus creature. Out, Julian echoed. You might have told me. How could you miss Miss Dora and her black behemoth of a pickup truck, roaring in here like Godzilla while we were trying to sleep? You're right, you are getting deaf. But today's Monday, Fiona said. Dora takes Mama out for fish and chips at the mall on Thursdays. At least that's what Bertie told me. Fiona watched as Julian and the lad exchanged glances. No, Dorosaurus is here all the time, sweetie, the lad said. Nearly every day, isn't that right, Julian? Spying on the neighbors again, are we? Julian said. Well, somebody has to. The lad flashed a grin at Fiona. Julian cleared his throat. Right, look here, Fiona. Why don't you come over and have a nice cup of tea? The lad and I, well, we've been wanting to speak to you about Cherie. We're a bit concerned about her, you see. Wait, look over there. Jules, the lad, pointed through the snowstorm. Far up the road, through the billowing snow, Fiona spotted a faint gray shape, stopping, starting, staggering a little. It's her, it's Cherie, Jules, the lad, said. Good Lord, he's right, Julian said. Stay here, Fiona. He picked his way down the icy steps. Together, he and the lad plowed over the snow-covered lawn and headed up the sidewalk. A swath of flurries obscured them from her view. A heartbeat later, they reappeared on either side of a tiny person, helping her along. Oh my God, it is her, Fiona thought. It's Cherie. Julian and Jules led Cherie up to the porch. She had on her long silver mink coat, its sleeves drooping over her hands. Her dyed black hair, scraped back in a thin imitation of her signature chignon, was dotted with snow. But Cherie seemed oblivious to the bitter cold. In fact, through the wind, Fiona could hear her singing. Sur le pont d'Avignon, l'on y danse, l'on y danse. Where the hell have you been? Fiona shouted. What are you doing out in this weather with no hat? Look at your coat. There's ice all around the hem from your dragging it through the snow. Have you even got boots on? Cherie tossed her head. I have been out. Out. I am not your prisoner. No, not at all. So Dory says. She threw Julian a flirtatious smile. I have been doing business. À la banque. From Dory, I am learning ATM, which, she shook a crooked bare index finger at Fiona, you refuse to teach me. That is not true. You told me you hate ATMs, Fiona said. Okay, time for Julian and me to leave, I think, Jules intervened. Not until we get her inside, out of this wind, Julian said. Bit of a problem, Cherie. Your lock's broken. Why don't we call the locksmith for you? No, he has been here already. And with surprising speed, Cherie crouched down and clambered swiftly up the steps on all fours. Oh my God, did you see that? Just like a monkey, Jules said. You heard Julian, Fiona said to Cherie beside her. My key doesn't work, and neither does his. Oh, that. Cherie pursed her thin lips. She pulled a shiny new key from the side pocket of her coat and thrust it into the lock. The front door opened smoothly. "Where did you get that key?" Fiona demanded. Cherie threw her a sly smile. "Dory gave it to me for my new lock." She shoved past Fiona and disappeared inside. "Right then, we'll be off," Julian called up to Fiona. "Get your mum settled and then come on over. We really do need to talk." Talk, Fiona thought, as if words would help. And I'm going to stop there for today. We'll do this story in 2 parts because it really is novella length rather than short story length. And not to have it go on for more than our usual sitting, I want to thank my good friend, Madeline Callway, who writes as M.H. Callway, for this story, Brainworm, which was featured, of course, in the Key of 13 by the Mesdames of Mayhem, Carrick Publishing 2019. And you can look for all of M.H. Callway's work. It's featured in many anthologies and magazines, as well as her novel, Windigo Fire, which is a really wonderful novel, and I think you'll truly enjoy it. I loved it. It's a thriller set in the far north, so it's something just a little bit different. And I, as always, want to thank Ted Carrick for our wonderful theme song, Eyes of Gold. And with that, we'll see you next time for part 2 of Brainworm by M.H. Callway.
Dusty road, a man alone. His vital signs go on hold, and I don't know what you've been told, but the years have turned my eyes gold. And I told you what you told me, we'd never be in the same boat for free, yet it rides